My name is Marcus Ellington, and for most of my life, I was the kind of man nobody noticed unless something needed fixing. A leaking pipe, a dead battery, a bill that had to be paid before midnight, a wife who needed someone steady enough to carry the weight of her dreams while pretending his own back didn't hurt. That wife was Denise. And God help me, I loved her. I met Denise Carter when I was 27 years old, standing in line at a grocery store with $12 in my pocket and a basket full of cheap noodles, canned tuna, and one bruised apple I had convinced myself counted as dessert. She was behind me, wearing a navy blue blazer, holding a folder against her chest, like it contained the future. When my card declined, I felt my face burn. Before I could tell the cashier to remove half the items, Denise stepped forward and said, "Put it on mine." I turned around, embarrassed and defensive. "I don't need charity." She smiled at me like she had already decided who I was. "Then call it a loan." That was Denise, sharp, confident, beautiful in a way that made rooms reorganize themselves around her. I paid her back 2 days later. She laughed and said, "Most men would have disappeared." I said, "I'm not most men." For years, I believed that was the sentence that made her fall in love with me. Now I wonder if it was the sentence that made her think I would always be useful. We started with nothing. Our first apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building where the heat worked only when it felt like it. The walls were thin, the windows shook when buses passed. The ceiling leaked during storms, and we kept a blue bucket beside the couch like it was part of the furniture. But back then, we were happy. At least I thought we were. Denise was working as an assistant at a financial consulting firm, and I was driving delivery routes during the day while taking night shifts at a warehouse. I came home smelling like cardboard, sweat, and gasoline. She came home smelling like perfume and ambition. Every night, she talked about where she wanted to go: corporate leadership, executive offices, glass buildings, a corner office with her name on the door. I listened to every word like it was scripture. "You're going to get there," I told her. She would lean against me and whisper, "Not without you." Those words kept me going through years I should have collapsed. When her car broke down, I sold my motorcycle to fix it. When she needed new clothes for interviews, I picked up weekend work painting apartments. When she cried after being passed over for a promotion, I stayed awake all night, helping her rewrite her presentation. When she finally got promoted, I was the one clapping loudest in the restaurant, while she pretended not to cry over a plate of salmon we could barely afford. I never resented her success. I carried it like it belonged to both of us. Denise climbed fast. Assistant became analyst. Analyst became manager. Manager became director. And with every new title, the woman I married became shinier, sharper, harder to reach. At first, I told myself that was normal. Success changes people. Pressure changes people. Money changes people. But we still didn't have much money. Not really. Denise made good money, but good money disappeared fast when you were paying old debts, helping family, repairing cars, covering medical bills, and trying to look like you belonged in circles that judged your shoes before they heard your voice. I stayed steady. That was my role. I was the man who made sure the lights stayed on, the man who remembered oil changes, the man who packed her lunch when she had early meetings, the man who rubbed her feet when she came home too tired to speak. And for a long time, I was proud of that. Then came the little changes. She stopped telling me details about work. She started guarding her phone. She laughed at messages, then locked the screen when I walked into the room. She bought new perfume, but never wore it around me. She said she was working late, but came home with her lipstick fresh. When I asked questions, she kissed my cheek and said, "Marcus, don't start." So I didn't. Because love can make a man patient, and fear can make him silent. The truth is, I was afraid of losing her long before I had proof she was already gone. Our marriage had become a beautiful house with cracks under the paint. From the outside, we looked solid. A hard-working husband, a successful wife, Sunday church when we could make it, family barbecues, holiday photos, smiles, matching rings. But inside, I could feel the distance growing. Some nights, Denise would sit across from me at dinner and scroll through her phone with a smile I hadn't earned in years. I would ask, "Who's got you smiling like that?" She would say, "Work stuff," and I would nod like a fool. I wanted to believe her. A man can survive many things, but realizing he has been begging for space in his own wife's heart is a special kind of humiliation. Still, I loved her. So when money got tight again, I didn't complain. When our mortgage payment nearly bounced, I worked overtime. When Denise said she needed a better car because executives notice things like that, I co-signed. When she said she needed to attend networking dinners, I told her to go. When she said I didn't understand the world she was trying to enter, I swallowed the pain and said, "Then teach me." She looked at me that night like she felt sorry for me. That look stayed with me. I should have paid attention. But love doesn't always blind you. Sometimes it teaches you to ignore what you already see. The lottery ticket was an accident. I bought it on a Thursday evening after my delivery route ran late. It had been raining, the kind of cold rain that gets under your collar and makes you feel older than you are. I stopped at a gas station to buy coffee because I still had another hour before home. The cashier, an older man named Mr. Alvarez, pointed at the sign behind him. "Big jackpot tonight," he said. 100 million. I laughed. With my luck, I'd win and lose the ticket. He grinned. "Then don't lose it." I don't know why I bought it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I needed to believe God still knew my address. Maybe I wanted one small thing in my pocket that felt like possibility. I picked random numbers. No birthdays. No anniversaries. No lucky patterns. Just numbers. I folded the ticket, slid it into my wallet, and forgot about it. That night, Denise came home after 11. She said she had a client dinner. She didn't ask about my day. She didn't notice my wet jacket hanging over the chair. She didn't see the exhaustion in my face. She walked past me, still typing on her phone, and said, "I'm going to shower." I sat alone at the kitchen table, eating reheated rice and chicken, listening to water run upstairs. My wallet was beside my plate. I saw the ticket sticking out and almost threw it away. Instead, I placed it under the salt shaker. Then I went to bed beside my wife, who slept turned away from me, her phone face down under her pillow. The drawing happened that night. I didn't check. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, made coffee, packed Denise's breakfast, and left for work while the house was still dark. It was near noon when my phone started buzzing. Mr. Alvarez had called twice. That alone was strange. I answered while sitting in my truck outside a warehouse, eating a sandwich with one hand. "Marcus," he said, voice shaking. "Did you check your ticket?" "What ticket?" "The lottery ticket." I laughed. "Man, I'm at work. You need to check it." Something in his voice made me sit up. "Why?" "Just check it." I pulled my wallet out slowly. The ticket was still there, folded twice. My hands were dirty from work, and I remember wiping them on my pants before opening it. Mr. Alvarez read the numbers over the phone. First number, match. Second number, match. I smiled because two numbers meant nothing. Third number, match. My smile faded. Fourth number, match. The truck suddenly felt too small. Fifth number, match. My heart started punching my chest. Then he read the final number. I looked at the ticket. I looked again. The world went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Like somebody had taken all the sound out of life. "Marcus?" Mr. Alvarez said. I couldn't answer. "Marcus, you still there?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The ticket trembled between my fingers. $100 million. Those words didn't feel real. They felt too big for my life. Too big for my name. Too big for the man sitting in a delivery truck with worn-out boots and a sandwich wrapped in foil. I thought about our bills. Gone. The mortgage. Gone. Denise's car loan. Gone. My mother's medical debt. Gone. Every sleepless night. Every final notice. Every time I had pretended not to be afraid. Gone. And then I thought about Denise. Not the distant woman she had become. Not the late nights. Not the guarded phone. I thought about the girl in the grocery store who paid for my food and called it a loan. The woman who once fell asleep on my shoulder in our freezing apartment because we couldn't afford heat. The wife who whispered, "Not without you." Tears came into my eyes before I could stop them. I didn't think about lawyers. I didn't think about lawyers. I didn't think about lawyers. Protecting myself. My first thought was simple. I have to tell my wife. Because even after everything, I still believed Joy should go to her first. I left work early. Told my supervisor I had a family emergency. In a way, I did. My whole life had just exploded. I drove straight to the lottery office, confirmed the ticket, signed the forms, and walked out with security instructions, legal warnings, and a temporary document proving what still felt impossible. I was rich, not comfortable. Not stable. Rich. The kind of rich that changes how people pronounce your name. The kind of rich that makes enemies smile. The kind of rich that reveals who was clapping for you and who was waiting to eat from your plate. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I wanted to see Denise's face. I wanted to watch the stress disappear from her eyes. I wanted to tell her she could quit if she wanted. Start her own firm. Buy her mother a house. Travel. Rest. Breathe. Be happy. With me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally give her the life she had been chasing. So I decided not to call. I wanted to surprise her. That was my mistake. I went to a luxury shopping district downtown, the kind of place where salespeople usually look through men like me. But that day, I walked in with proof of a fortune in my pocket and hope in my chest. I bought Denise a diamond bracelet, a designer handbag she had once paused to admire through a window, a pair of shoes she had called ridiculous but perfect. Then I stopped at a florist and bought the biggest bouquet they had, pink roses and white lilies wrapped in clear paper. The florist smiled and said, "Anniversary?" I smiled back. New beginning. And I believed it. God help me, I believed it. Before heading to her office, I stopped at a print shop and had them make a large ceremonial check as a joke. $100 million. I imagined Denise laughing, screaming, crying, running into my arms. I imagined her co-workers staring while she told them, "That's my husband." I imagined every lonely night being explained away by stress, every cold answer softened by relief, every distance closing because the pressure was finally gone. I was still writing a love story in my mind while life was preparing to hand me a tragedy. Denise worked at Harrow & Blake Financial Group, a tall glass building downtown with marble floors, chrome doors, and a lobby that smelled like money. I parked across the street. My hands were full. Shopping bags in one hand, flowers in the other, the big check tucked under my arm. I caught my reflection in a store window and laughed at myself. I looked nervous, like a young man about to propose. Maybe, in a way, I was. I was proposing a new life, a better life, a life where we stopped surviving and started living. Then, I looked across the street at the building, and I saw her. Denise stood inside the glass entrance near the lobby, wearing a black fitted suit, her hair falling over her shoulders, her smile bright and soft. She looked beautiful. For 1 second, my heart lifted. Then I saw the man standing in front of her. Tall, clean-cut, blue suit, confident posture. Too close. Way too close. Denise reached up and placed her hand on his chest. Not a professional touch. Not friendly, intimate, familiar, the kind of touch a wife gives when she forgets the world can see her. The man leaned down slightly, smiling into her face. And Denise smiled back at him the way she used to smile at me. My feet stopped moving. The bouquet slipped from my hand and hit the sidewalk. Pink roses scattered near my shoes. People passed around me, but I couldn't move. I stood there, holding $100 million in fake paper, while the woman I wanted to surprise looked at another man like he was her home. And in that moment, before I knew his name, before I heard the first lie, before my marriage officially died, I understood one terrible thing. The money had come too late, or maybe it had arrived exactly on time. I don't know how long I stood there. 5 seconds, maybe 5 minutes. Time has a strange way of breaking when your heart does. The city kept moving around me, as if nothing had happened. Car horns echoed through downtown. People hurried past carrying coffee cups and briefcases. A cyclist shouted at a taxi. Someone laughed across the street. The world refused to stop simply because mine had. I stared through the massive glass windows of Harrow and Blake Financial Group, praying that my eyes were lying to me. Maybe he was congratulating her. Maybe they had just closed an important deal. Maybe I was looking at 1 second of a completely innocent conversation. I wanted to believe every excuse my mind could invent. Then he reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair away from Denise's face. Not quickly, not accidentally. Slowly, comfortably, like he'd done it 100 times before. Denise didn't move away. She leaned closer. Then she laughed. It wasn't the polite laugh she used for clients. It wasn't the loud laugh she used around friends. It was the soft laugh she used to save for me. The laugh I hadn't heard in months. My stomach twisted so violently that I nearly dropped the shopping bags. The oversized ceremonial check slipped against my arm. $100 million. An hour earlier, it had felt like the beginning of every dream we'd ever shared. Now it felt ridiculous, worthless. A piece of cardboard mocking me. I bent down to pick up the bouquet that had fallen onto the sidewalk. Several roses had broken loose from the wrapping. One of the white lilies had snapped clean in half. I don't know why that bothered me so much. Maybe because I suddenly realized that flowers break easier than people think. Just like trust. I considered walking away. I really did. Getting back into my truck. Driving home. Calling a lawyer before calling my wife. Protecting myself. But 32 years of loving someone doesn't disappear in 32 seconds. I needed answers. Not assumptions. Not imagination. Answers. I crossed the street. Every step toward those glass doors felt heavier than the last. As I approached, Denise finally looked up. For one brief, beautiful moment, her eyes widened. I thought maybe she was happy to see me. Then I recognized the expression. It wasn't joy. It was panic. Pure panic. The man beside her turned to see what had captured her attention. He looked at me with polite curiosity. He had no idea who I was. Or maybe he thought he did. Denise hurried toward the revolving door before I could enter. "Marcus!" Her voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" I forced myself to smile. I came to surprise my wife. I lifted the bouquet. And I brought a few gifts. Her eyes immediately dropped to the shopping bags. Then to the oversized check. Then back to my face. She looked terrified. Not guilty. Terrified. What's all this? "I've got incredible news." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Can we—" "Not here." That answer hurt more than I expected. Not here. If your husband arrives unexpectedly with flowers, why would not here be your first response? Unless someone inside wasn't supposed to know he existed. The man in the blue suit stepped outside. He smiled politely and extended his hand. "You must be Marcus." I looked at his hand. Then at Denise. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her. "You know my name?" I asked. He nodded warmly. "Of course. I'm Adrian. I've heard a lot about you." Something inside me cracked. He had heard about me. From my wife. The question was, what exactly had she told him? I shook his hand. His grip was confident. Executive confidence. The kind that comes from always believing you're the most important person in every room. "It's nice to finally meet you," Adrian continued. Denise interrupted almost immediately. "Marcus, why don't we go somewhere else?" I ignored her. "How do you know my wife?" Adrian smiled. "We work together. She's one of the brightest people in this company." Denise forced a laugh. "Marcus gets protective." "Protective?" "No. Confused." "There's a difference." I looked back at Adrian. "So you're her supervisor?" He hesitated. "A colleague." Something about the pause bothered me. It was too careful. Like he was editing himself. Then Denise reached over and lightly touched his arm. Just for a second. But I noticed. So did he. She realized what she'd done and quickly pulled her hand back. Too late. I'd seen it. My chest felt hollow. Still, I refused to jump to conclusions. I had spent decades building this marriage. It deserved more than assumptions. I turned toward Denise. I won the lottery. She blinked. What? I won. The jackpot. $100 million. Neither of them spoke. I unfolded the large ceremonial check. The sunlight reflected off the white surface. $100 million. Adrian's eyebrows shot upward. Denise stared at it, then at me, then back at the number. Her face lost all color. For a split second, I saw genuine shock. Not excitement, calculation, like her brain had instantly begun solving a complicated equation. I laughed nervously. I wanted to surprise you. I swallowed. I thought we could celebrate together, she whispered, almost mechanically. 100 million? I nodded. It's real. I already confirmed everything. The money's ours. The word left my mouth naturally. Ours. It had always been ours. Everything I'd ever earned belonged to us. Every overtime shift, every paycheck, every sacrifice. Why would this be different? Denise suddenly wrapped her arms around me. She hugged me tightly. Too tightly. Anyone watching would have thought it was the embrace of an overwhelmed wife. But I felt something strange. She wasn't crying. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't trembling with happiness. She was thinking. I could almost feel her mind racing. Then she kissed my cheek. Oh my God, this is unbelievable. Behind her shoulder, I saw Adrian studying both of us carefully. His smile had disappeared. He looked concerned. Not jealous. Concerned. Almost like someone whose plans had unexpectedly changed. That tiny observation lodged itself in the back of my mind. Denise stepped away. We should go home. Right now. I smiled. I figured you'd want to tell your co-workers first. No, she answered too quickly. They don't need to know. I frowned. You've worked so hard here. I thought everyone would celebrate with you. I said no. The sharpness in her voice surprised both of us. She immediately softened her expression. I mean, I just don't want attention. That sounded reasonable. Except, Denise had always loved recognition. Every promotion, every award, every achievement. She enjoyed celebrating them. So why hide this? Adrian finally spoke. Marcus, congratulations. That's life-changing. It sure is. He hesitated. I'll let you two have your moment. He turned toward Denise. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Such an ordinary sentence. Yet Denise looked relieved to hear it. She nodded. I'll call you later. Those 5 words landed like stones. I'll call you later. Not about work. Not about the presentation. Just, I'll call you later. Adrian disappeared back into the building. I watched him walk away. Something felt unfinished between them, like I'd interrupted a conversation that mattered. Denise gently grabbed my hand. Let's go. As we walked toward my truck, I couldn't stop glancing back at the glass building. I noticed several employees looking through the windows. Some were smiling. Some whispered to each other. One woman looked directly at Denise, then looked at me, and frowned. Not with sympathy, with confusion. I almost walked back inside right then. Almost. Instead, I opened the passenger door for my wife. She climbed in silently. The bouquet rested across her lap. The shopping bags surrounded her feet. The diamond bracelet. The designer handbag. The expensive shoes. Everything I'd imagined giving her during the happiest day of our lives. Yet the truck felt strangely cold. I started the engine. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she broke the silence. So, how exactly did this happen? I laughed. I bought a ticket after work. I almost forgot I even had it. She nodded absent-mindedly. When do you get the money? Soon. The lawyers are explaining everything. Her head turned immediately. Lawyers. Financial advisors. Tax specialists. They said I shouldn't make any big decisions yet. Her expression changed again. So, you don't actually have access yet? The question caught me off guard. Not today. But everything's confirmed. She looked out the window. Oh. Just. Oh. No scream. No tears. No excitement. Nothing. I tried to ignore the disappointment creeping into my chest. Maybe she was simply overwhelmed. Anyone would be. I reached over and took her hand. We made it, Denise. We don't have to worry anymore. She smiled. A perfect smile. Practiced. Controlled. I know. Then her phone vibrated. She glanced down instinctively. The screen lit up. I only caught part of the notification. Adrian! She locked the phone so quickly that it almost slipped from her hand. Who was that? She didn't hesitate. Emily. I looked straight ahead. She had forgotten I'd already seen the name. She had lied. Without thinking. Without blinking. Without needing time to invent it. Just lie. The realization settled over me slowly. People don't become good liars overnight. They become good through repetition. I kept driving. Downtown disappeared behind us. The silence grew heavier. Finally, I forced a smile. So, what do you want to do first? She looked at me. What do you mean? I mean, we're free. We could travel. Start a business. Buy your mum that beach house. Quit working. She interrupted immediately. I'm not quitting. I laughed. You wouldn't have to work another day if you didn't want to. I said, I'm not quitting. The certainty in her voice surprised me. You've dreamed about leaving corporate life. No. I dreamed about succeeding. This changes our finances. It doesn't change my career. I nodded slowly. Fair enough. But another thought quietly formed in my mind. If someone suddenly received $100 million, why would the very first thing they fight to protect be the office where another man smiled at them? By the time we reached home, I had convinced myself I was overthinking everything. Stress, shock, disbelief. That had to be it. I refused to let suspicion poison the greatest day of my life. I carried the shopping bags inside. Denise followed behind me. She set the bouquet on the kitchen counter without looking at it. I placed the oversized check against the wall. The afternoon sunlight filled the house. This should have been the happiest afternoon we'd ever shared. Instead, it felt like two strangers pretending to celebrate. While unpacking the gifts, I noticed Denise quietly walk into the hallway. She looked over her shoulder once, thinking I wasn't watching. Then she disappeared into the bedroom with her phone. Seconds later, the bedroom door clicked shut, and through the silence of our home, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone whispering. I couldn't make out the words. Only the tone. Soft. Urgent. Intimate. I stood alone in the kitchen, my hands resting on unopened gifts worth thousands of dollars. For the first time since I'd matched those lottery numbers. A terrifying thought crossed my mind. Maybe I hadn't arrived at her office in the middle of an innocent misunderstanding. Maybe I'd interrupted a secret that had been growing for a very long time. And I was about to discover that winning $100 million wasn't the biggest surprise waiting for me that day. I stood in the kitchen, frozen, staring at the hallway where Denise had disappeared. The expensive gifts sat unopened on the counter. The bouquet I had carried so proudly, only an hour earlier, was already beginning to wilt without water. My heart pounded so loudly, I could barely hear the whisper coming from behind our bedroom door. At first, I told myself not to listen. Every marriage deserves trust. Every spouse deserves privacy. But trust had already begun cracking the moment I saw another man's hand brushing my wife's hair. I quietly walked toward the bedroom. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hallway seemed longer than it had ever been. As I reached the door, I heard Denise's voice more clearly. No, he doesn't know. Silence. Then another whisper. I wasn't expecting him today. Another pause. I know. Those 3 words drained every remaining ounce of hope from my body. I wasn't hearing a woman discussing office schedules. I was hearing someone trying to manage a crisis. A crisis named Marcus. I stepped back before she opened the door. Seconds later, she walked into the hallway with a forced smile, slipping her phone into her pocket. There you are, she said casually. I was calling my sister. I looked directly into her eyes. You told me Emily texted you. She blinked. What? In the truck. You said the message was from Emily. Now you're saying you were talking to your sister. For the first time all day, Denise looked genuinely trapped. It was both. I nodded slowly. You're lying. The room fell silent. She folded her arms. Marcus, you're being ridiculous. No. I think I've been patient. I think I've ignored a lot of things because I loved you. Her expression hardened. What exactly are you accusing me of? I took a deep breath. The man at your office. Adrian. Tell me the truth. She looked away. He's my colleague. I didn't speak. She sighed dramatically. We've worked together for years. You've never mentioned him. There are hundreds of employees. I don't tell you every name. Do you usually touch all your colleagues the way you touched him? Her face changed instantly. You were spying on me. I was bringing flowers to my wife. I happened to see another man smiling at her like she belonged to him. She threw her hands into the air. Oh my God. I knew this would happen. Knew what would happen. That you'd make something out of nothing. Her confidence surprised me. She wasn't acting like someone caught. She was acting like someone offended. For a moment, I questioned my own memory. Had I exaggerated what I saw? Then I remembered the smile, the touch, the panic on her face when she noticed me. Number. I hadn't imagined any of it. I quietly walked into the kitchen and picked up the oversized ceremonial check. $100 million. I looked at it before meeting her eyes again. You know what hurts? She remained silent. The money doesn't matter anymore. I would have traded every dollar just to walk into that office and see my wife waiting for me. Her eyes softened for just a second. Then her phone vibrated again. She instinctively reached for it. I moved first. I grabbed the phone before she could. Marcus! She lunged toward me. Give it back! I looked at the screen. One message. From Adrian. Did he believe us? My hands began shaking. Not from anger. From disbelief. There it was. No explanations. No misunderstandings. Just one sentence that answered every question I hadn't wanted to ask. Denise tried to snatch the phone away. Marcus, let me explain. I stared at her. Believe us? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Believe us? Tears filled her eyes. It isn't what you think. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound a man makes when the last piece of his heart finally breaks. I've heard people say that in movies. I never thought my own wife would say it to me. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. When did it start? Silence. When? She looked at the floor. A few months. I closed my eyes. A few months. She nodded weakly. Then another truth arrived. One she hadn't intended to reveal. You've been working late. She nodded. The business trips. Another nod. The client dinners. She couldn't answer. She didn't have to. Every late night. Every ignored phone call. Every cold dinner eaten alone. Every excuse. Every lie. They all stood together in that kitchen, surrounding me like ghosts. I looked around the house we had built together. Every wall held a memory. Every room contained years of sacrifice. Yet suddenly none of it felt like home. It felt like a stage where I had been the only actor who believed the script. I gently placed the phone on the counter. I didn't lose my marriage today, I said quietly. I lost it long before I bought that lottery ticket. Denise began crying. Real tears this time. But I couldn't tell whether she was mourning our love or the future she had just watched slip through her fingers. I didn't say another word. There was nothing left to say. The woman standing in front of me looked exactly like the one I had married, yet somehow she was a complete stranger. I picked up my car keys. Denise wiped her tears. Marcus, please don't leave. I looked at her quietly. You already left. It just took me until today to realize it. I walked out of the house, carrying nothing except my wallet and the lottery documents. Behind me, I heard my wife calling my name, but for the first time in 32 years, I didn't turn around. That night, I checked into a quiet hotel across town. I placed the lottery paperwork on the desk, and stared out the window for hours. The city lights blurred together as questions flooded my mind. Had she ever truly loved me? When had I become the backup plan? Would she still have confessed if I hadn't won the lottery? One question haunted me more than all the others. If I had walked into her office empty-handed, instead of carrying $100 million, would she have chosen him without hesitation? The next morning, I hired the best attorney and financial advisors I could find. Before claiming a single dollar, I created legal protections around every cent. The winnings went into newly established trusts and investment entities under my sole control. Nothing was transferred. Nothing was shared. My attorney looked me in the eye and said, "Mr. Ellington, you've arrived just in time. Had you moved too quickly, this could have become far more complicated." I nodded silently. For once in my life, I wasn't making decisions with my heart. I was making them with clarity. 2 days later, Denise asked to meet. She chose the little coffee shop where we'd had our first date. I arrived early. When she walked in, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She sat across from me and immediately reached for my hand. I gently pulled it away. That single movement seemed to hurt her more than any words could have. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." I remained silent. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I ended it." I finally spoke. "When?" "The day after." "The day after what?" "The lottery." I almost laughed. "So you ended the affair after discovering I was worth $100 million. She lowered her head. "It wasn't about the money." I leaned forward. "Denise, don't insult both of us." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I still love you." I shook my head. "No, you love the security I gave you. You love the future you imagined. But love doesn't lie every single day. Love doesn't invent business trips. Love doesn't introduce another man into a marriage." She cried openly now. "I'll do anything. Marriage counseling. Therapy. I'll quit my job. I'll never speak to Adrian again." For years, those promises would have been enough. "Not anymore. You offered to quit your job only after discovering the fortune." I stood up. "If I'd never bought that ticket, you'd probably be having lunch with Adrian right now." She couldn't deny it. I left the cafe knowing our marriage had ended long before the divorce papers were ever filed. The legal process lasted months. Denise contested everything at first. She argued that the winnings belonged to the marriage. My attorneys demonstrated exactly when the ticket had been purchased, when the prize had been claimed, and how every legal step had been documented. The evidence was undeniable. Eventually, the negotiations ended. She walked away with what the law required, not with the fortune she had imagined. When the divorce became final, I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt peaceful. There is a difference. Victory means defeating someone else. Peace means finally stopping the war inside yourself. Over the next several years, I invested carefully. I bought commercial properties, started a logistics company, funded engineering scholarships for students who couldn't afford college, paid medical bills anonymously for struggling families, helped repair homes for elderly widows in neighborhoods where I had grown up. The money changed my lifestyle. It never changed my values. One afternoon, nearly 3 years later, I attended the opening of a new community technology center my foundation had financed. Children filled the building with laughter. Parents thanked volunteers. Teachers smiled as students explored computers they had never dreamed of owning. As I prepared to leave, someone quietly called my name. I turned. It was Denise. She looked different, simpler, older. Not because of age, but because life had finally stripped away the image she had spent years trying to protect. She smiled sadly. "I heard this was your project." I nodded. "It is." She looked around the building. "You really did everything you said you wanted to do. I finally had the chance." She hesitated. "I think about us every day." I believed her. Regret has a way of staying longer than romance. She looked into my eyes one last time. "I hope one day you forgive me." I answered honestly. "I already have." Her face brightened for a moment. Then I continued. But forgiveness doesn't reopen closed doors. She understood. Without another word, she quietly walked away. I watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling neither anger nor satisfaction. Just gratitude. Because losing my marriage forced me to find myself again. People often ask me what it feels like to win $100 million. The truth surprises them. The lottery didn't make me rich. It revealed who was already bankrupt. Money didn't destroy my marriage. It exposed the cracks that had been hidden beneath years of excuses, routine, and misplaced trust. That winning ticket didn't ruin my life. It saved the years I still had left to live. Sometimes the greatest blessing doesn't arrive wrapped in happiness. Sometimes it arrives carrying heartbreak, forcing you to walk through the fire before you discover the peace waiting on the other side. And if I could go back and relive that day, I'd still buy the lottery ticket. Not because of the money, but because, for the first time in decades, it gave me something far more valuable than wealth. It gave me the truth. The greatest lesson in this story is that character is revealed when circumstances change. Money, success, and opportunity do not create loyalty or betrayal. They simply expose what has already been growing in the heart. Marcus believed that years of sacrifice alone could guarantee a lasting marriage, but healthy relationships require honesty, communication, respect, and mutual commitment every single day. Blind trust without meaningful conversations can allow distance to grow unnoticed. At the same time, pain does not have to define a person's future. Instead of allowing anger and revenge to consume him, Marcus chose wisdom, legal protection, personal growth, and generosity. He transformed heartbreak into purpose by helping others and building a meaningful life. This reminds us that dignity is far more valuable than revenge, and that forgiveness does not always require reconciliation. Sometimes the strongest decision is to walk away peacefully from what no longer honors your values. True wealth is not measured by the size of a bank account, but by integrity, self-respect, resilience, and the courage to choose truth over comfortable lies. Those qualities remain valuable long after money can be earned or lost. Remember that lasting success begins with the choices you make when nobody is watching. Build trust carefully, protect your peace wisely, and never confuse sacrifice with permission to ignore warning signs. Love should inspire growth, not fear, secrecy, or constant doubt.